We are on to week 6, Tyler, and big news already. We have our first coach firing of the season, and it's not a name that we expected, Robert Saleh. That's a pretty big firing. The Jets, they're 2-3, obviously coming off back-to-back bad losses, but I don't think anybody saw this happening with Aaron Rodgers here at the helm. It was like this was supposed to be the situation we all anticipated. And for fantasy, we saw a really good thing for Garrett Wilson, 20 plus targets. I think obviously there was some internal conflict, some things that were hindering this offense, just this team in general. But that's some sweeping moves from a team that's also interested in Devontae Adams. A lot to talk about here with the Jets. Let's start off with just the coach firing, man. How did you feel when you heard that news?
Yeah, I was pretty shocked. I was not. I don't think anybody was really expecting it, because even him, like they said that the report was he walked in like going to work and then ended up getting fired. So I will say this, like
they took his ass out and the security had to take him out. He didn't get to say bye to the players.
It's a weird situation. Like it leads me to believe that there's like more kind of going on, but at the same time, I will say this, like he is sub 500. I mean, he's been sub 500 his entire career. Has not, like, there's been little peaks and stuff with him, but has been great. And Aaron Rodgers is basically like this team right now, right? Like, and if there was something kind of going on behind the scenes that we have no idea about, like him and Aaron Rodgers just weren't on the same page. Like, this team is all in. They are doing whatever Aaron Rodgers says. I'm not saying he's to fault or anything here, but I don't know. It's a really weird firing. It would have made more sense if they would have lost Monday night to the Bills this week, and then he's fired next week. Maybe they kind of want to get ahead of it. I have no idea, but it was definitely strange. I don't know. I don't know.
Crazy rumors that he got embarrassed overseas. Like, you never know what's going on with this team.
Yeah.
And you got Rodgers and him publicly going at it like, oh, well, tell the offensive line to be better and we got to switch things up. Like, there's just too many nuances there. I think it was probably time for a switch, and then next week might have even been too late, losing to the Bills. So hopefully it gives the team some inspiration, because we did see really good performance out of Garrett Wilson. And this is the essence of don't panic, right? We've talked about this, and we will continue to talk about this throughout the trade deadline, throughout your fantasy season. Don't panic. We saw Garrett Wilson, the player that you drafted in the first, top 7 to 5 wide receivers. This is who you drafted. And there might be some tough matchups along the way. There might be some changes here to the Jets organization. But for now, before any other receiver gets here, this is the player you drafted. And I think this serves as a reminder to a lot of players that you have, including another teammate that he has as well in Breece Hall. Don't give up on your elite guys too early. They're elite for a reason. Teams trust them. And when you get a guy that can get you 20-plus targets in any single game, you know he's the real deal. Stop letting the early fantasy season dictate how the rest of your season goes. So congrats to those who bought low on Garrett Wilson like we talked about.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, it's a long season. And I think that people they can't understand that. They're like, oh, my team's doing so bad right now. I'm like 2-3 or whatever it is. It's a long season. Things will change. As long as you believed in the player at the start of the year and you drafted him and you had high hopes for him, and he's not doing that well, like, just don't give up yet. Now, if we're getting week 8, sure, and maybe it might be too late, but like, this is why you play the game. Like, there's risk with every single players. Players have good years, they have down years. Stuff happens. Players go on runs, right? Like, we see it all the time where they get really, really hot and they have a great end of the season. So absolutely. And the thing with Garrett Wilson that I liked, and like I've always been a big fan of Garrett Wilson, is just the targets. Like, targets leads to points. I think that there was still a lot of meat left on the bone watching that game. It could have been an even bigger game. And I know a lot of people are worried about Breece Hall with the offensive line and this and that. Like he's still seeing the volume. He's still seeing the snaps. Everything's there. I think this team should get better. Like, you hope it gets better. They seem like they're kind of getting better. We'll see. I still have all the faith in Breece Hall that he can still be an elite fantasy asset. We'll see what happens.
What about people like me, Tyler? Because I know you had Garrett Wilson really high, right? And I guess I'll speak for myself here. I didn't have Garrett Wilson as high coming into the year, and I don't have him as this top 5 receiver potential. I don't have him. I barely had him inside my top 10. And I saw the touchdown potential with Aaron Rodgers, and I know the changes are coming to this offense. I also think this could be one of those moments, like me personally, this could be like a sell high moment as well. Like as much as it maybe was a buy low opportunity heading into this week, I think with some tough matchups on deck, we talked about the tough schedule coming up for Garrett Wilson. Could also be a sell high moment for those who maybe overvalued him or maybe expected him to be a top 5 asset, and we haven't really seen that yet. Are you still holding at that price? Because for me, I'm out. I think this is the time to ship. You can get back your top 10 wide receiver asset. The problem is there just ain't a whole lot of locked in top 5 to 7 guys outside of Garrett Wilson. So I would say if I could get maximum value for him, this is the time normally I'm doing that. How do you feel about me saying that right
No, I understand. Like, and especially because he had the big targets. Like the targets are a main talking point. I want to say 22 targets or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I mean, that's insane. That's just that's kind of stupid. So yeah, and then you can also kind of say, obviously, like if you watch, I feel like a lot of people watch that game just because it was the London game. It was on early in the morning. Maybe some people didn't wake up and watch it, but whatever it is, like I think like you saw, right? Like there was a lot of plays that were still left out there. The communication, like the timing with him and Aaron Rodgers still wasn't perfect, but at least it's a step in the right direction. And obviously, like if you want to use this opportunity to get out, I think it's a great opportunity. For me personally, like I would just stick with it. And the reason why is like you said, like we continue to see some players go up and go down, and we're probably going to see this for a while where we're not quite sure what the exact top 12 is. Some guys are going to start really performing well. Some guys are going to kind of falter down. They're going to fall down a little bit. So for me personally, I would just sit tight. And the reason why is once again, like dude has just earned targets throughout his entire career at a very high rate. And I'm a firm believer in earning targets makes you a very good wide receiver. I think he's a very, very good wide receiver. It should, once again, it should only get better from here on out, hopefully with him and Aaron Rodgers. But you also have to admit, like Aaron Rodgers, 40 years old.
Yeah.
Like that offensive line does not look great. The coaching's weird right now. Like the whole Jets is kind of weird. So it may be a good opportunity to get out, but I would personally hold that.
Devontae rumors are heating up.
Hey, yeah, that's true. Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot there. And I think, at some point we're also expecting Breece Hall to look a lot better too. And Breece Hall's kind of struggled over the last couple of weeks. And for whatever reason, it feels like it's really soured his value. A lot of people that have him are just like truly concerned about his production. And Breece Hall after week 5 last year was the RB 26. And it's like, I think people, and I know it was a different circumstance. He was coming off of the injury. Like the situation wasn't the same, but we could have had the same concern last year with him. There was a couple other running backs that were outside of the top 15. And you mentioned it. You get hot. There's times in the season where you get hot. When do most running backs get hot? In the second half of the year, when weather starts to become a factor, teams stick to the ground game a little bit more. So I think people are significantly overreacting on Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, these guys who we drafted really early. And it's about like I feel like you've got to be able to be strong with these players mentally before you decide to ship them off or claim that they're RB2s. I've seen that now where Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall are now mid-tier to high-end RB2s. To me, that makes no sense. At a position that's already thin, the guys that we know have the upside to make it, that we saw early on in the season have 16 to 18-point floors, and now obviously the production's dipped. We have to adjust that floor. But we're just treating them now as RB2s. Make it make sense for me, Tyler, because it don't make sense to me at all.
No, and for me personally, like I feel a little bit more confident with Breece Hall than maybe Bijan, just because like with Breece, I want to say he played a 77% snap share. Like the snap share has always been there with him. Now you can say Braylon Allen's been a little bit more involved than you'd like to see, but like still Breece is dominating all the important snaps, goal line snaps, passing down snaps, all of that. I like, so is Bijan Robinson.
Yeah.
But like Tyler Algier is being a little bit more involved. His snap share is continuously going up. I'm not saying like I'm not worried about Bijan. Like I feel good about both these guys. But like the other thing too with Breece is we've already seen it last year, RB2 in the season in full point PPR leagues, still seeing a ton of targets. Like I'm not panicked about these guys. Obviously, it's not what you hope for right now, but I do think things will get better. It's a long season. Once again, like we talk about this all the time. there's new quarterbacks here that are coming off significant injuries. They got to get right, get better as the season progresses, and like got to gel everything. All the timing's got to get right. So I'm not too panicked on either one of these guys.
We're literally a blow up game from both of them being
Yeah.
top 5 guys. Like
Yeah.
one blow up game can change your entire thought process on a player, and the timing of it changes your thought process on a player. If Alvin Kamara had waited until now to have his 4 touchdown game, we would be talking about him completely differently. If Joe Mixon was hurt up until this point and hadn't had his game, we'd be calling him one of the biggest busts of fantasy before he had his 30 carry game. It's all about timing, and the perception of your player will change once that game happens. If Bijan goes out tomorrow and has a 200-yard, 4 touchdown game, they're going to say he was worth the RB1 pick. Now, this is why we drafted him. And now you'll hear me talking about it, right? You'll be like, yeah, this is why we drafted him. Breece Hall goes out and he pops off 2 long 60-yard runs and has 5 catches in the passing game and a 40-point day. We're going to be like, shit, this is why we took Breece Hall, number 3, top 3 running back, some off the board at number 1. So it's oftentimes when things happen that it changes our perception at a crazy way, man. And, I think people are giving up on these guys a little too early. I've seen some math like Kenneth Walker for Breece Hall or Kenneth Walker for Bijan. And I love Kenneth Walker as a player, but to me, that seems a little steep. That seems like a little bit too much of a trade-off for a guy that you saw on Monday Night Football have 3 touchdowns, and now you're enamored with him.
Well, and I want to say Kenneth Walker didn't even have that great of a day this past weekend either.
He didn't.
So it's like
9 touches or something like that.
Yeah, like 9 touches, and I don't even think it was good efficiency-wise. So well, he had 7 catches. Okay, never mind. Yeah, but like still, and that like on the ground though, five carries for 19 yards.
Yeah,
like it's guys are gonna have dud weeks, and they're gonna have multiple dud weeks, and sometimes dud weeks are gonna happen in a row. Like it is what it is. But there's a reason why you drafted these guys so high. They're cream of the crop in terms of talent. I think things will get right, and it's also like you're just losing so much value if you try to trade these guys that I would just hold on to him and just hope things work itself out and just kind of go down with the ship. Because there's a reason why you drafted Bijan Robinson. There's a reason why you drafted Breece Hall. You thought they're going to be the elite guys. I still think that they can be elite, so I wouldn't sell.